Hello guys, it's Bella and welcome back to my channel. Today we are doing another Mystery Monday for Mystery Week. So I'm doing an entire Mystery Week, which is an entire week of Mystery Monday. So make sure you guys stay tuned. And today is actually a super duper exciting one because it's our first ever Mystery Monday sponsor! Today's video is actually sponsored by Audible, which if you don't know what they are, I'm sure you've heard of them. It is a website where you can go on and listen to audiobooks. I've mentioned on my channel before that I love reading. I always get DMs from you guys asking to do a video on my favorite books, which I feel like I couldn't do a video on it, but I always reply to you guys and give you book recommendations. Another thing I've mentioned is I love having background noise. I always have something playing when I'm in the shower, on the toilet, you know, when I'm cooking, cleaning, driving the car, like whatever it is, I always have to have something playing when I'm doing my makeup. So Audible has been amazing because I've just been way too busy lately to read, which makes me so sad. But I have been able to technically read an audiobook while I'm just doing all of my things, while I'm cleaning, while I'm driving. It's awesome background noise for driving. I just finished listening to the book The Art of Not Giving a Fuck, which I'm sure you guys have heard of. It was a really incredible book and really opened my eyes. And if you guys want to listen to stuff as well, there's a whole true crime section. I know. You can go to audible.com/Bella Fiore, or you can text Bella to 500 and you will get an exclusive 30-day free trial as well as a free book of your own choice to listen to, and I will have all of that information in the description down below as well. So let's go ahead and get into today's case now. So normally when I do these videos, people always ask me like, how do you sleep at night? Or, you know, do these freak you out at night? They don't. I'm normally totally fine, and I more so find the cases interesting rather than scary. But this case to me, honestly, was so heartbreaking and it was so sad to research into. Don't know why this case was different to others, but it is honestly so sad. And today we are going to be talking about the abduction and the murder of Isabel Celis. Isabel Mercedes Celis was born on the 27th of August in 2005 in Arizona to Sergio and Becky Celis. Her father Sergio is an oral surgery assistant and her mother is a nurse at the Tuscan Medical Center. Isabel had two older brothers who were literally the definition of older brothers. They were so caring and always looked after her and looked over her, and she had a really great upbringing. Her parents would just adored all three of them. They lived in an Adobe style home, very beautiful. I'll insert pictures of it. And it was just off of E Broadway Boulevard on E 12th Street in Tuscan, Arizona. In 2012, Isabel was 6 years old and she was in the first grade attending the Academy of Tuscan. And she was really advanced for her age. She was described as really friendly and also gifted. She played basketball for the Little Diamondbacks, and she also helped her mum garden most afternoons as well. She was just this gorgeous little girl. She had long brown hair, hazel eyes, she had the cutest little smile, and she just seemed like the sweetest girl. So the more I researched this case, the more it just made me sad, because I just feel like she had her entire life ahead of her and she had so much going for her even at such a young age. So Friday the 20th of April 2012 began like any normal day for Isabel and the Celis family, which I feel like is how most, if not all of these cases go. They're just the most average of days for everyone involved, for the victim, for the family, for the people around the victim. It's always just so average and so normal and unsuspecting. That afternoon, Isabel's two younger brothers had a Little League game down at the park, which they were very excited about, and Isabel was going to go and watch that as well with her family. The match was held at the Freedom Little League field, which Isabel was there. There was this little dugout where she was playing for the entirety of the game. And then the game ran late. It finished at about 10 p.m, which is when the whole family left together. I believe I read that Sergio, the two sons, as well as Isabel were there, and the mother, Becky, was there later that night at home, but I couldn't figure out and I couldn't find anywhere whether she was at the game or not. So anyway, at around 11 p.m, Becky was getting Isabel ready for bed. She was putting her hair into little ponytails before taking her to bed and tucking her in, and Isabel did have her own room. For the most part, on most most nights she did choose to sleep with her brothers, but on this particular night she was sleeping in her own room by herself. Becky then went to bed as usual in the master bedroom, but she went to bed alone this time because Sergio this particular night was watching a baseball game that he had recorded a few days earlier and just fell asleep on the couch while watching. The next morning at around 5 a.m. Sergio woke up. He said that he didn't hear any noises, there was nothing that woke him up, and then he did go to the master bedroom with Becky. But when I think about this, it reminds me of the fact that every morning when Kerry has a 6 a.m. shift, he wakes up at 5 a.m. and so do I, and I would wake up from him spraying his deodorant, but I had no idea that's why I was waking up. I didn't hear him spraying his deodorant. I would wake up and think that I was just waking up, and then after a few times of it happening, I was like to Kerry, oh, it's so weird that like I wake up whenever you're leaving, and he was like, oh, you wake up every time I spray my deodorant. But I had no idea that that's what it was. I had no idea that I was hearing that. So Sergio saying that he didn't hear anything or there was no noise or anything like that, you know, he might have just not heard it, but that was what woke him up. Just some food for thought before we get into the case. Anyway, at around 6:30 a.m, Alicia Stardivant, she was the next door neighbor. She said that she heard a bit of commotion going on, basically because her dogs were just going crazy, and then she could hear some voices on her side of the wall. So she was their next door neighbor, but between her house and the Celis family's house where Isabel's bedroom was, they were the two closest points. There was actually a wall between them. So she said that she heard the voices on her side of the wall. She claims that the two voices sounded male, but she also said that she didn't really think much about it at the time because it was light outside and it didn't really sound like there was a struggle going on or anything, just, you know, two men having a bit of a chat. And then sometime between 6:30 a.m. and 7:30 a.m, Becky left for work. She said that when she left, she didn't hear anything unusual and she didn't notice anything unusual, but she also said that she didn't check Isabel's room before she left. Then at around 8 a.m. when Sergio woke up, he went to check on Isabel, which is when he noticed that she was not in there and she was gone. So Sergio and his two sons started looking around the house for Isabel, which is when Sergio Jr., one of the sons, noticed that the window was completely open and the screen that was normally on the window was gone. So he went and told Sergio. Sergio went and had a look for himself. He looked out of the window and noticed that the screen was actually on the floor below the window next to the house. Immediately then he called Becky and told her to get home from work, and then he called 911. And the 911 call is probably one of the weirdest details about this entire case. I will play some of it for you guys, but it is just eerie. Like, it's crazy how calm Sergio is. Not only in comparison to everyone else in his family, like Becky was freaking out, the brothers were freaking out, but even if it's just, I know a lot of people have different reactions to different things and everyone, you know, has a certain way of coping with things and dealing with things, but when he was on this 911 call, it was literally like he was just ordering takeout. Like, it is just the most calm thing. He was having a bit of joke on the phone call. Like, at one point he was like, oh, you know, I called my wife and told her to get her ass home.
Is Mom there also?
She had just left for work. I just called her and I told her to get her back home.
And like had a bit of a laugh about it. And when he said that he was watching baseball on the couch that night, like he had a bit of a laugh about it.
I was in the living room watching the Diamondbacks game at midnight.
And other than that, he was just so insanely calm.
Arizona Police Department. Deb Hart.
Hello, I need to report a missing child. I believe she was abducted from my house.
Why do you think she was abducted?
I have no idea. We woke up this morning. I went to go get her up for her baseball game, and she...
I don't know. It's freaky a little bit. He honestly doesn't sound worried at all, and he doesn't sound like he's stressing, freaking out about where his 6-year-old daughter could be. So this call, being as strange as it was, sort of started a lot of speculation about Isabel's disappearance, and, you know, a lot of speculation around Sergio thinking that something was off about the whole disappearance and something was off about him and his role in the disappearance. Another 911 call was also placed by a neighbor on behalf of Sergio Jr. because the two brothers were going around the streets and to neighbors looking for Isabel as well at the time.
Yes, I'm calling on behalf of a young man. He's he says his little daughter, his little sister, has disappeared from the house.
I believe that Becky also ended up calling 911 herself, and she actually broke down while she was on the call when she was acknowledging that she didn't even check on Isabel before she left.
My husband, I went to work this morning at 7, and I didn't even come and check on her. I should have come and checked on her.
Okay. All right, just take a deep breath, okay? I know it's hard. She doesn't have any...
Which honestly, I know how that would feel to her, but I don't think there's anything wrong with that. A lot of parents would just go to work without checking on their children. There was another parent there, you know, there was no reason to suspect anything was wrong. And it was just so crazy, the difference in demeanors between Sergio and pretty much everyone else.
Hey, I need you guys to calm down. My sister's gone. Someone broke in and grabbed her. Hurry,
my husband, I went to work this morning at 7, and I didn't even come and check on her. I should have come and checked on her.
Okay. Is Mom there also?
And she had just left for work. I just called her and I told her to get her back home.
Okay.
Like when Sergio Jr. was on the phone to the 911, to 911, and when Becky was on the call to 911, you know, they were frantically asking, you know, how long till you guys get here? When are you going to be here? Trying to figure out, you know, what was going on. But Sergio didn't once ask, you know, when are you guys coming? Or, you know, can you send someone out? Whatever, like he just didn't seem concerned. Anyway, officers ended up arriving not long after and were searching the neighborhood. And one thing I do want to mention about this case is I swear 99.9% of these cases, there's always something wrong with the police investigation. The police aren't investigating, the police take too long to investigate, they're not investigating properly, there's always something. But I feel like in this case, the police actually did the most incredible job and they really did everything that they could have done, I feel, in my personal opinion, from what I have read. So that definitely sets this case apart from pretty much all of the other cases that we've spoken about. So anyway, police spoke to pretty much every single neighbor and not one of them had any information, any leads, or hadn't seen or heard anything. There was one neighbor who said that they saw a white van drive past a couple of times the night before, and then there was another neighbor that said a Hispanic man approached her a couple of days before, and she said that he put his arm around her and that's about it. Neither of these, you know, things had anything to do with the case and didn't really lead to anything. By that same evening, they had the FBI involved, they had sniffer dogs involved to aid in the search. They had also put the neighborhood on lockdown and shut down several streets away from their specific street, and they also set up a command post. A few officers also went to check the landfill that was closest to the house and, you know, sectioned off a specific section. Police searched everywhere, even the Freedom Little Leagues where they were watching the game the night before. And while they were actually at this Freedom Little Leagues field, there was an officer running all the number plates of all of the cars, and they ran the number plate of this one specific car, and the person driving it lived in the neighborhood where the Celis family lived. So the officer went and spoke to the owner of the car, who was a male, and he just said that he had heard about the investigation and was also doing everything that he could to try and help search for Isabel. So he like had a little flashlight and was looking through like drainage pipes and stuff like that to see if he could find anything. Police also, of course, looked around the Celis house because that is where she was when she disappeared. And while they were looking around, they found footprints on top of an electrical box which was around the side of the house. There were also several items that they found with blood on them, so they took those into evidence, and they also took all of the cars at the residence into evidence as well. So that was a blue Toyota Corolla, a maroon Lexus, and a red Honda, I really don't know, Acus. I'm not sure. And the Honda, when it was taken in and looked at, it had two items in it that were apparently stained dark brown or red. One of them was a shower like vinyl curtain, which is a little bit suspicious. Why would you just have a shower curtain in your car with something that looks like a blood stain on it? Anyway, a forensics team also started investigating and using luminol to have a look around the residence and several other places. And luminol, if you don't know what that is, I'm sure you've seen on like if you've watched any crime shows where they, you know, turn the lights off and then anything that comes up like that little white or light blue color, that shows that there has been like blood there because the luminol reacts with the hemoglobin in blood, which is why it lights up. So this luminol test did have a reaction on the foot of the twin bed and in the driver's seat of the Toyota Corolla. Police also said while looking around the house that they found some suspicious circumstances as well as a possible entry point for the person to have come in and taken Isabel. And they also took blood samples from Sergio and Becky, of course. Becky also asked the police if they could contact the Mexican police in case somebody was trying to smuggle her across the border, which they did contact the Mexican police. They also looked around Sergio's work. Of course, when anybody disappears or is murdered, the first suspects or the first person that you look into are the people closest. The family, the friends, the boyfriend, that kind of thing. They're always the first people that you look into in one of these cases. So of course they looked around his work, they looked in the dumpsters, they actually issued a subpoena to his boss on May 2nd. They wanted to get records of his 401k sharing plan, which I'm not even sure what that is, and they also wanted to get his like profit sharing plan, and they also gathered information on Sergio's like access to anesthesia and drugs, which he did not have access to. So not only do they first look into family and, you know, the people around the victim, but also he was very suspicious in his 911 call, so I feel like that is why they looked into him as hard as they did. So as I said earlier, sniffer dogs were brought in and they did get a hit on one of the neighbors' house, but when the police went and investigated the house themselves, they didn't find anything. Police also happened to discover some surveillance footage at some local like shops and stuff like that that did point to the direction of the Celis family's house and neighborhood. The cameras showed Sergio and his son searching around the neighborhood. They showed Becky getting home, and at 1:24 p.m. they showed a large van driving past as well. At 2:36 p.m. a security vehicle was seen coming up, stopping, turning their lights off, and then kept driving. And then again at 3:32 p.m. there was a male seen walking through a parking lot. There was also a group of like 5 or 6 people who were seen leaving a club near the Celis house at around 1:30 a.m. I believe it was 3 men and 2 women, and this was the night before Isabel's disappearance, or the night of her disappearance, the night of the Little League game, or morning, I guess. One of the men that was seen on the camera came forward to the police just to let them know that he hadn't seen anything and he didn't have any information, and basically to account for their whereabouts and what they were doing. And during their investigations, police also received a few phone calls and tips from locals as well as alleged psychics. And I'm gonna be honest here, I don't believe in psychics. I don't believe that there are real psychics. I don't find any of their information credible. I would never look into it, never listen to it myself. And honestly, in some cases, I think it can be quite cruel, and I think a lot of people claiming to be psychics can be taking advantage of people who are going through hard things, saying, you know, oh, I can, you know, if you pay me, I can speak to so-and-so, or I can try and help you with this investigation. I don't believe any of it. I think it's a scam. I think it's false, and I think it's really shitty for some people to pretend they are a psychic and to give people false hope and take money from them. But, you know, personal opinions aside, I will tell you some of what was said. One psychic phoned and said that Isabel was taken by 2 men, that one was younger and one was an older man, and apparently she was being kept in a U-shaped building. Another psychic also said that Isabel was taken by an older man with white hair. As I said, there were also a lot of locals calling in. There was one young girl who said that she saw what happened to Isabel in a dream. Another local said that somebody that he used to date who was part of the Celis family was responsible for this. And another man said that he saw a young girl matching Isabel's description running along Columbus, and that there was a Hispanic male with white hair running after her. He said that it was odd, so he turned around to try and locate the little girl, see what was going on, but the time he got back, the little girl was nowhere to be seen, and he also didn't call 911 about it for some reason. 2 days after after Isabel was reported missing, an officer actually filed a report stating that he was approached by someone on Broadway Boulevard. It was at a bagel store. He said that this man claimed that he knew the Celis family. He said he coached baseball with Sergio, knew him very well, and then he also said that something was very off about it, and basically, in other words, said that he thought Sergio was involved. This guy, Mark, also apparently wanted to speak further with the officer about the case. On the same day, the Celis family released a statement basically pleading for their daughter to come home, or for anybody that had her to bring her home, and they also offered a $6,000 reward alongside 88 crime for her safe return. Isabel's cousin, Justin Matrimonio, he's not her actual cousin, he's Becky's cousin. But you know how you have those people in their family that you call like an uncle or a cousin? Like, I have an uncle, Peter, we call him Uncle Scum, and he actually wasn't my uncle at all. He was just my dad's best friend. So I feel like there's a lot of people like that in everybody's family. I had my mum's cousin, I always called her my cousin, so, you know. Anyway, he spoke to the media and he said that Sergio and Becky were just completely beside themselves, and he said that they were trying to let police do their thing and trying to let police, you know, get as much information as they can, but that you really don't think anything like that could happen to you, which is so true. I'm sure anybody at home, me as well, never thinks that anything like this could happen to you. You don't realize it until it happens to you. Anyway, Justin, he was a bit of a suspicious character himself, actually. A lot of people looked into him because he made statements like this to the media and pleaded with the media and seemed really sympathetic, but then 2 weeks later, he left the country. He got his car, well, not the country, sorry. He moved interstate and got his car shipped interstate and just left, and he cut the Celis family off completely, stopped talking to them. He started refusing to speak to the police, refusing to speak to any reporters. The Celis family actually hired a private investigator themselves. His name was Jerry Snyder, and he said that early on in the investigation, he was actually very suspicious of Justin as well, because him and a few of his friends had a 6-hour gap in their timeline that they couldn't account for. And that was on the day Isabel went missing. Justin's friend Sebastian Hartsfield actually said that the reason they couldn't account for this and couldn't say what they were doing is basically because it was 420, so they were all drinking and smoking weed together. They went back to Justin's apartment at around 2 a.m. and then didn't wake up until about 8 a.m. apparently. Sebastian also mentioned that the reason Justin left is because he was sick of people looking into him and sick of people accusing him, and he also didn't think that Justin was involved. But Justin also ended up hiring one of the best lawyers in Tucson, and when the family, like Becky and Sergio, did try and contact him, he just basically said to them, you can talk to my lawyer, which is so suspicious to me. Although, to give him the benefit of the doubt, I do believe more could be going on behind the scenes. Maybe Sergio and Becky were accusing him and being rude to him behind the scenes, and that's why they didn't speak to him. You know, there's always, you don't know the full story and you can't really judge until you have the full story. I know personally I wouldn't want to speak to my cousins that were accusing me of murdering their daughter. Hiring a lawyer is probably the most suspicious thing for me. The fact that he hired a lawyer when you don't need a lawyer to tell people to fuck off. But maybe he thought that that was his only option. I don't know, it is a bit suspicious to me. But honestly, besides all of that, there were a lot of red flags to this guy and a lot of suspicious things that he did. He also used to live at the Celis family household and did still have a key to the house, which I thought was sus, but for some reason, just saying it out loud right now, I realize if he had a key, then why would the window be open and the screen from the window gone? He could have just walked in and taken her, you know what I mean? Anyway, moving on to the 25th of April, Police Chief Robert Velliceno, he held a press conference and he said that he was really disappointed that they didn't have any leads and they didn't have, you know, any suspects, anything to go off, but said that they were doing everything that they could to, you know, solve this case, figure out what happened. He also mentioned that there were 15 registered sex offenders in the area, in the neighborhood where the Celis family lived. But he also mentioned that all of these 15 registered sex offenders were very cooperative and that all of them had been ruled out as suspects. A few days later, police also began to look in underwater and local lakes, but again didn't find anything. And in the meantime, while investigations were going on, Isabel's family were just really doing everything they could to keep Isabel's name in the media and keep people thinking about her, you know, in case anyone saw anything, anyone decided to come forward, anything like that. They had benefit concerts, made appearances, all of that kind of stuff. And then on May 11th, circling back to Sergio here, how I did say he was a bit of a suspicious character. Well, on May 11th, the Child Protective Services were called on the Celis household and they actually asked Sergio to leave the household, which is weird because they didn't remove him. They spoke to him and basically told him that he had to leave and he agreed. The call was for an unknown reason though. I'm assuming the reason they didn't remove him and the reason he agreed to go is because leaving was his only option, so he just took it and left. But, you know, Becky was very upset about this, said that he was a great husband and that he was a great father and that this was unnecessary. She also said that he had been unfairly targeted by the police and unfairly focused on. So that is most of the solid evidence for now. There were no real leads or anything else. In this time, police actually did end up declaring this case an abduction. It wasn't until the 31st of March in 2017 that there was a new break in the case. The Tuscan police held a press conference and said that 6 to 8 weeks prior to this conference, some human remains had been found in rural Puma County. And for reference, Puma County and Tuscan were, like the city centers anyway, were about an hour away from each other. They explained that after testing the DNA of these remains that they were confirmed to be Isabel Celis remains. They also went on to say that these remains were not found by accident, but would not say who led them or who indicated them to where these remains were. They also didn't comment on whether there were any new suspects either. More than 450 people gathered to mourn the loss of Isabel at her funeral at Augustine's Cathedral. Unfortunately, despite finding her remains, there has been no more evidence, there has been no more leads, and that's pretty much it for this case. So we are going to get into theories now. And of course, if I did leave out any information, if I did forget anything, then please comment it down in the description below. Same with theories. The first theory is that Isabel was abducted by a complete stranger. It is possible that while they were at the baseball that night that somebody saw them, maybe they were targeting or there to look for someone specific, or, you know, whatever the case may be. It's possible they saw her, targeted her, and then followed the family home that night, waiting until, you know, they knew everyone was asleep or whatever to actually take her. Whether they smuggled her, whether they took her to sell her into slavery, whether they took her for their own personal use, is obviously nobody knows. There were, as I said, 15 registered sex offenders in the area, so while all of their names have been cleared, it is of course still possible that, you know, one of them did this, or, you know, maybe it was someone completely different. The second theory is that this is someone who knew Isabel or the family, or a family member. Sergio is obviously a massive possibility and a main suspect to everyone. A lot of people find him really suspicious. Maybe he was in debt for some drugs, in debt to some drug dealers, and Isabel was taken as ransom, or even to send a message to him. This is 100% speculation because there is no evidence that Sergio is connected to drugs in any way. But you never know, because like I said, Child Protective Services was called for an unknown reason, so maybe they were called for drug purposes or because he was a danger to his children. I personally don't know what to think. I don't really think that he was involved, and I do think that people have been too harsh on him. There's literally no other reason to suspect him other than he was unnervingly calm on the 911 call. Other than that, there is absolutely no evidence to suggest that he had anything to do with this. Not to mention, people do deal with things in different ways, and even though that was like a really shady way to deal with things, people do deal with things in different ways, and that may have been his way. Maybe it hadn't sunk in yet that, you know, something bad could have happened to her. I don't know, but that 911 call is the only evidence that he had anything to do with it. The second suspect in this theory is obviously Becky's cousin Justin. He was a lot older than Isabel, and he was also just like a shady person in general, I guess. We don't really know what was going on behind the scenes, but from what we could see, from what I've read, from what I could hear, he was acting really suspicious. He shipped his car with him, moved countries 2 weeks after, refused to speak to police, reporters, hired a lawyer, refused to speak to anyone in the Celis family, which is like, honestly, if you didn't do something and your family were accusing you of something like that, you would be hurt, but I don't know if I find it overkill, but it's a lot. I feel like the only reason I would say it was overkill is because I am doing this video and I guess looking for someone to be suspicious of. Also, the fact that there was 6 hours on the day of her disappearance that he couldn't account for. Although, listen, I don't think it's too far-fetched that he was smoking weed and drinking with his friends. Maybe he owed money to some drug dealers, he was in debt, she was taken as ransom, she was taken to send a message. Maybe he had some personal beef with the family and took Isabel to send them a message. Or maybe he was part of a group that was involved. Maybe that group, both him and Sergio could have been a part of that group that was involved. I will point out that none of the ransom theories make sense because no one ever asked for any ransom. And why would they kill her if they wanted ransom? So the ransom theories don't make sense. But, you know, maybe taking her to send a message. On top of that, you know, the reason Sergio and Justin are suspects, I believe, is because 2 male voices were heard by the next door neighbor. But that is everything. So if you guys do have any theories I missed or any theories that you've gathered of your own, I would love to hear them in the comments down below. Of course, if I missed any information, also let me know in the comments down below. I'm sure I and everybody else reading the comments would love to hear. I love when we discuss these cases in the comments together because I honestly learned so much from you guys, and there are so many of you that come up with the most interesting, most practical theories in every single one of these videos, and I love that. I love that you guys are so into these videos, so definitely leave some comments down below and let me know what other cases you would like me to cover while you're down there, and hopefully I will see you guys in my next video. Bye!